You ready? If you would, please take your seats. This time, I'd like to call the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation Commission meeting to order this 17th day of June, 2020. Rhonda, if you would, please call the roll.
Commissioner Brewster. Commissioner Barwick. Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Gaddis. Here. Commissioner Zelps is absent. Commissioner Grondike.
Here.
Commissioner Holder is absent. Commissioner Mabry.
Here. If you would, please stand for the invocation to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Bill Dinkins, please.
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day and for the time we have to spend with our families and friends. Grateful, Lord, for the many blessings you bestow upon us. Gladness of your grace. Father, I ask you to lift up this commission. Provide us the guidance and wisdom needed for the conservation of the natural resources of this great state. Give those who may be sick or in need, especially those directly impacted by the recent pandemic. Father, I also ask you to bring peace and ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
JD, if you would, please do the introduction of guests.
Yes, sir. I don't think anybody new has come in, so we have with us, and actually on the agenda to talk to us about our good friend, the feral hog, Scott Howells from USDA, and Wildlife Damage Services, Tyler Talley from eCapital's here, and then of course we couldn't have a meeting without Laura McIver and James Deach from Quail Forever. So thank you all for being here. No awards this month, no tenure awards this month, Mr. Chairman.
Item number 7, consideration and vote to approve, amend, or take other action on the minutes of the May meeting. Ask for a motion. So moved. Second. Discussion.
Commissioner Brewster. Aye. Commissioner Barwick. Aye. Commissioner Hughes. Aye. Commissioner Gaddis. Aye. Commissioner Grondike.
Aye.
Commissioner Mabry.
This time it asks for the director's report from JD.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I might ask Corey to kick us off with the wrap up of this year's very unusual legislative session.
Thank you. Good morning. Do I have to wear this up here?
Not while you talk.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So I don't actually have much to report. We had, I think, 30-some bills going into this legislative session, and around mid-March, the legislature took a break for COVID, and then when they returned, it was to address emergency orders from the governor and tackle legislation related to the emergency. And then when they actually returned, I guess it would have been late April, early May, they had suspended their committee rules, and so they didn't have any bills go through the opposite chamber committees. And so they originally were supposed to hear a priority list of bills, and I think they ended up passing maybe a couple hundred toward the end of the session, but none of those were wildlife bills. So there were no Title 29 bills that were sent to the governor's desk, so that's the main thing to report. You probably saw in the director's report, kind of one big thing that we did try to push at the last minute was we took one of the bills that was, I think, a feral hog night hunting bill, dropped the language out of it, and proposed to allow the commission to set licenses and fees by rulemaking. So pretty big change. We did get it past the House, but it was not heard in the Senate. So I think the plan is to revisit that bill. And of course, you can check out the language in there, but it is a pretty big overhaul. It repealed several sections of statute that were specific licenses. And we would give that authority to you all and basically overhaul licenses, hopefully in the next rulemaking cycle if the legislature gets you that authority. So that was the main thing that happened toward the end of session. And then the Only other thing I had on here is, of course, interim studies are starting to be proposed. I don't know that the Senate has announced a deadline yet, but the House should have a deadline in, I think it's next week. There was one kind of wildlife-related bill or wildlife-related interim study that's been proposed so far, and it's related to retrieval of hounds on private property. So we'll probably keep an eye on that and maybe attend that interim study from our perspective. And I think that's it. Do you guys have any questions?
Any questions on state legislative front?
I guess the only other thing I'll say is we are, as per usual, trying to get legislators out in the field. It's of course an election year, so a lot of them are busy with primaries and their elections, but we took a group out catfishing last weekend, and it was a lot of fun. So if you guys are interested in tagging along on any of those, just let me know. Of course, it's fun for us too, so can't complain. Anything else, JD?
I think that's it. Corey, thank you.
Thank you.
I failed to mention in introducing guests, I noticed we have Katie Lippold too from the Secretary of Energy and Environment's office. So thank you for being here. We're live streaming this on our Outdoor Oklahoma YouTube channel too. So because we have limited audience abilities, we thought we'd give everybody the opportunity to tune in online. So keep that in mind as you think about touching your face and everything right now. You're being filmed by that camera in the very back. So you've got a federal report there from Brittany, and of course, everything that's been happening in Washington, D.C., if there is anything happening in Washington, D.C., has been focused on COVID relief. There have been several stimulus packages come through. You can read all about those in Brittany's report. She continues to monitor the situation. The one thing that is, there's a couple of things in here maybe of note, but on the stimulus front, you know, there's work afoot on maybe another stimulus package. A lot of debate about what that might include. On the wildlife front, we've submitted some ideas because obviously if we got an infusion of money to do renovations at fish hatcheries or major work at any of our WMAs, that would be jobs. That would be putting people to work, at least temporarily, to do that. And so there's some interest, especially on the House side, in looking at a stimulus package that might include an infusion of wildlife conservation funding that would go towards that sort of thing. But maybe just as critically, we've asked them to at least try to provide some relief when it comes to federal grant deadlines and match requirements. Right now, you know, most of our grants come with a 75 federal, 25 non-federal match requirement. And if they could slide that to 90-10, which they've done now on the gun range money that we get, that would allow us to push funding a lot further as well. So there's some interest in that. So we'll just have to stay tuned and see if we get anything done through the stimulus package there. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee released their draft Water Resources Development Act 2020 bills. One of those bills has a provision that deals with the handling of invasive species, which is of interest to us, but more specific to us, there's a provision that Senator Inhofe included, at least in the initial version of that bill, to require modifications in the operation of Lake Tenkiller to help provide the water we need for the lower Illinois fishery, including the trout fishery, but also a very important striper fishery and paddlefish fishery and that sort of thing. And so it's encouraging. We're still working with his office to see if that language will stay and if it can maybe be modified to answer some additional questions that the Corps of Engineers raised. So stay tuned for that. But for the first time in decades, there's at least some hope that we might be able to get some additional water out of Lake Tenkiller to keep the fishery alive during drought times in particular, or hot times, either one. Downstream of Tenkiller, I'll let you read what else she's got in the report, and I'll just switch to the calendar and director's report. You've got that in front of you as well. You can see several things that have happened since the last meeting. We had a big wrap-up meeting for year one of implementing our strategic plan. We hopefully maybe at the next meeting we'll have kind of a summary of that wrap-up for you all to look at, see all the many things that have been accomplished over the first year of implementing our strategic plan. Once you kind of take a look at the list, it's actually pretty phenomenal. Lots of good things happening, we believe. I'll point out coming up next month, Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, WAFWA, is having a virtual summer meeting this year. It was supposed to be hosted in Park City, and that county in Utah banned groups larger than 50 people through the rest of the year, I think. So that was not conducive to a WAFWA meeting, obviously. So that'll be online. I think we or Rhonda may have sent around registration details for those that want to register. I know Commissioner Barwick has already signed up for that. So if that's something you're interested in joining. WAFWA, you may recall, is the one that has a commissioner's specific track. That's usually 1, maybe 2 days of the conference. So more details to come on that. Just let us know if you're interested in that. I will point out, because of this COVID and not being able to be hosted in Park City in the big shuffle, you may recall that we were going to host WAFWA's 100th anniversary in 2022. Now we've been pushed off to 2023. So we'll get to host the 100th anniversary +1. But in order for us, WAFWA, the WAFWA organization, to be able to avoid some significant penalties and so forth, we had to agree to let Park City host in 2022. New Mexico was already contractually committed to 2021. So that pushed us off because we had no contractual obligations at this point. Pushes us off to 2023. So good news is that gives us 1 more year before we have to really buckle up, and I'm looking at Rhonda here in particular, and plan for that big event. So stay tuned for more. The next commission meeting will be August 3rd. I will point out the original July date was only going to be a couple of weeks from now. So not much additional business to cover between now and then. And I do want to say that as much as we would love to have a big celebration today for Commissioner Grondike's last official meeting after 44 years of service on the commission, the COVID restrictions sort of prevent us at this point from having a big group. So our plan is to have that big celebration here on October 15th. So mark your calendars now. I'm sure we'll have invitations going out, but we're hopeful we'll be able to have bigger group settings at that point and have a fitting celebration of with all of his vast friends and colleagues that he's accumulated over the years, and have a building dedication, dedicate the new John G. Grondike Wildlife Building here on that date as well. So we're looking forward to that. So today we'll have a little barbecue luncheon and some cake to have a smaller, more intimate celebration, but certainly been an amazing ride in 44 years, and I've only been here to enjoy 3.5 years of it myself, but incredible. All the things that you've contributed to wildlife conservation and this commission. And so we thank you for your many years of awesome service to the sportsmen and sportswomen of the state of Oklahoma. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's gone by fast. You know, things go fast if you enjoy doing it and all. I'm very proud of the accomplishments over the 40 years. I look back at the equipment and the vehicles and what we had to work with 40 years ago and what we have today. It's amazing.
Yeah.
We had a hard time buying decent flashlights 40 years ago. And I think we can all take pride in how it's evolved and how we've expanded. And we're doing a lot of things today we never dreamed of 10 or 20 years ago in regard to programs for children and archery, shotgun in the schools programs, and we really expanded what we do out there and enlarged our base and people that we serve. So it's with great pleasure that I've done that over the last 44 years, and I'm very pleased that the governor appointed Chad Dillingham, who's here with us today, is my replacement. I've known Chad for a long time, and I know he will be an asset to this commission and the department. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, for those years of service, 44 years, and I don't think he's added a gray hair to his head. Some of us are less fortunate, but John's done well. Thank you, John. At this time, I'd like to have Amanda Stork do the presentation of financial statement for April 30th.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Director Strong. So today I'll be going over the financial statement for April 30th, 2020. Oh, sorry. You told me that and then. Okay. All right. So the combined balance sheet for all fund types for April 30th, 2020. We have total liabilities of $15,754,223, and our total fund balance is $405,434,556. So our total liabilities and fund balance is $421,188,779. On your next report, it'll be the combined statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances. So our total revenues as of April 30th, 2020 is $47,176,512. Our total expenditures is $53,916,735. For our total fund balance of $29,669,168, compared to April 30th of 2019 of $36,608,797. That's a negative 18.96% over the previous year, which is accounted for in our expendable trust fund balances. And I skipped, let me go back. All right, so our trust fund combined balance sheet, we have total assets for April 30th, 2020 of $220,600,895. That's made up of expendable trust, non-expendable trust, pension trust, DC trust. So our total fund balance is $220,600,895. And I'm skipping over the one that I skipped too. Combined statement, revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. This is through April 30th, 2020. Our total operating revenue is $5,729,502. Our total operating expenses is $6,983,437. And so our net income for the month ending April 30th is negative $1,253,935. But our total fund balance is $209,620,210. We also have contributions in total of $42,432.50. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Poured the slab on the shop building there, this past week. A lot of work going on there right now. Anytime you want to go look,
Anybody else have any other questions or concerns? Okay. Motion by, Barwick, second.
Mhm.
Okay, Brewster. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Brewster? Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Hughes? Commissioner Gaddis? Aye. Commissioner Grondike?
Aye.
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye.
Before we dive into the budget, I might recognize Secretary Wagner for being here. Thank you, Secretary Ken Wagner.
Item number 11, take action on establish the Wild Turkey County bag limits.
Let's see, we've got to do
Building.
number 10, the budget first.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
We have Amanda on there twice.
okay, yeah. Go ahead, Amanda.
Dawn's gonna get that up real quick.
Yeah, Amanda, I might make a comment before you start here, and all as chairman of the Finance and Retirement Committee. We met here 3 weeks ago or so to go over the budget and look at it very closely. And as a lot of other businesses, this agency was impacted a great deal by the virus and what it's done to the stock market. And that has affected our budget because of the following things. In 1967, when they passed the lifetime license and we started having lifetime licenses in Oklahoma, all the money that from the sale of the licenses had to go into a principal or a corpus account, and the department could never spend that seed money or the cost of the license. That is still true today. So if you have right now $80 million in your lifetime license and all, and the market goes down 10%, which it did this March and April, you've got a negative $8 million in the account, and you have to cover that because the corpus has got to be protected. So you take the investments or the income side and offset it back over there. And we have used up a great deal of any excess funds we had that was expendable, you could put into the budget or use for other purposes that the department deemed a priority. That has not been the case this year because of the downturn, and it burned up most of those flexible funds that we could use for different projects. So we're really, the staff, Amanda and JD and the chiefs of the various divisions have really looked very hard at that budget and have cut out quite a bit of expense. We have delayed some purchases and done some things just to be careful that we don't overspend our budget, because if the market would go back down again, you have to still maintain that corpus of the licenses that were sold up to date. 20 plus years ago, the legislature allowed us to expand our opportunity for investment, and we could go into equities, which we have done and we do now. But before that, you couldn't. The only thing you could be in was U.S. Treasuries or something like that that yielded very little. It's been a good program for us, but 2008, 2009, we experienced the same thing, but we had a large expendable funds from income through that investment and all. We have three major accounts. We have the lifetime license account, we have the defined contribution retirement account, and we have the defined benefit plan and all. Those are all separate, all doing well, except they've been impacted just like the lifetime license has. And in the last 30 days, the market has recovered quite a bit, which I'm sure Amanda will cover. So just want to kind of give you a heads up of one of the issues that we have fought this year because of the market fluctuation, and it's still fluctuating quite a bit. So Amanda, thank you.
So I present to you our proposal for FY21 budget. I kind of wanted to go back and talk about the process with which we took, and I want to thank all of the chiefs for working with us throughout the process, and the assistant chiefs we met starting in January to outline the process for this year. And of course, the process changed a little bit with COVID, but they continue to work really hard with us to make sure that we presented to you a balanced budget. So when we looked at all of our operating expenses and all of the prior year obligations that we were given, we came up with a budget that was $5.7 million negative.
So initially, we took that budget to the finance committee to let them know that if we were to fund all of our prior obligations, all of our retirement obligations, all of our salaries and benefits, and just things that we've started in prior years, federal projects that we are committed to, we would be in the negative 5.7 million. So after talking to the commissioners on finance committee, working with the chiefs, we came up with an overall budget of $48,234,025, excluding capital expenditures, which decreased our total budget by 5.1%. Including capital expenditures, our budget is $63,822,287, which is a decrease of 17%. So
That's a decrease over last
budget.
fiscal year.
So you can see our baseline budget in FY19 was $48,024,552, and then with add-ons and capital expenditures, because those aren't considered in our baseline budgets as a division, that's $76,110,858. So compare that to last year's budget of $76,896,700. You can see the decrease, big decrease in add-ons, but again, our add-ons include capital expenditures, and those are the majority funded with 25% state and 75% federal funds. So as I take you through our process, I'll kind of explain. After we met with the finance committee, we determined our increase in sales in the spring, that we would include another $500,000 in carryover. We had, when we started the budget process, and we, in March, April timeframe, we were comfortable with increasing our carryover by $1 million, but I think given the end of May numbers, and then going into June, we'll be fine with carrying over $1.5 million in increased sales over what we projected last year's increased sales to be. And then we also sold a warehouse property over downtown, so that is going to be included in our carryover, a little over $1 million. So after we added on an additional $1.5 million, we were needing to come up with $4.2 million. And how we accomplished that was the total percent of each division's budget of the agency's total budget would need to be reduced. So administration's total percentage of the budget is 10%. So admin's cut was 10%, wildlife 24%, fish 19%, law enforcement 19%, INE 6%, and then our capital expenditures needed to be reduced by 22%. When you reduce capital expenditures, you can't just reduce the state portion, you'll also have to reduce the federal portion. So I know I'm kind of getting in the weeds, but I wanted to explain why we ended up with a $7.1 million reduction, because we couldn't find just state dollars to cut out of the budget. So some of the divisions took a little larger cut, because when you cut the state portion, you also have to cut the federal portion. I hope all that's making sense. With all of those things taken into consideration, we ended up with a balanced budget. We have $1,422 after we get to the end there. And I think, oh, there's a little delay. I did talk a little bit about revenue, but we only included $1 million in expendable trust. Last year's budget was built with $8 million of expendable trust. So that is, you can see, a $7 million hit to what we can match for federal funds and so forth, because those funds are used to match. So anything we reduce on the state side gets amplified on the federal side. Also had decreased lease revenue, decreased paddlefish, caviar, estimating all of those to be decreased. Slight increase in grant revenue, that's available, and so you see our total available revenue. And our proposed capital expenditures, I kind of mentioned, we started looking at everything that we had as a prior obligation. Those needed to be funded. So what you'll see there is projects that have been previous year started or current year started that we have multi-year obligations to fund. So you can see our total in capital expenditures is $12,408,262. 995 of that is from state, 7.7 million will be federal, and then NERDA. We have current year money that hasn't been expended that we'll be using in the next fiscal year. So that total is 3.6 million.
Might just point out while you're there on the NERDA column, the natural resource damage, you all will remember from last year's budget that we were able to get assistance from the Secretary of Energy and Environment's office, their natural resource damage assessment fund, which is settlements from companies that polluted the environment at some point in Oklahoma. And as a natural resource trustee, Secretary Wagner is in control of what we do with those funds. And so they were very gracious last year to help us use that money to leverage federal funds and do some great things. Some of those projects still ongoing, but he also recently agreed to dip into that fund again to do 3 projects in particular. One we'll talk about later in the agenda, which is Barren Fork, potential land acquisition and restoration work up in northeast Oklahoma, the Jap Beaver Dam renovation, and then statewide habitat renovation, which is money that we send to several of the wildlife management areas to do some wildlife habitat improvement work. So thank you, Secretary Wagner, for graciously agreeing to help fund those projects this year.
So items that we considered for reductions were vehicle replacements that were scheduled to be made, equipment purchases, travel through no fault of our own. Most of our out-of-state travel is canceled, so we were able to reduce that. Fuel use and hiring targeted vacant positions. So right now we're going to plan to delay those hiring until mid-year on a few of the positions. As with all of these, if the market does rebound and we're able to do a mid-year revision in our budget, we will be considering everything and that we targeted. A lot of the things that we targeted weren't things that we can necessarily cut permanently. They were things that we would still need to do if we're able to do them at mid-year. So hopefully that helps answer any questions you have, but I'm happy to clarify where necessary.
So in a nutshell, Amanda starts as our new CFO, and we have the first bad budget year we've had to deal with since I've been here, so definitely wasn't her fault
Not
though.
my
But
fault.
glad to have her aboard as we work through it. But as she said, kudos to the chiefs for helping us slog through it and come up with some budget cuts over what we had last year. I'm optimistic though that we'll be able to come back to the commission mid-year and come in with an adjusted budget to restore some of those cuts back into the budget, whether it be some delayed vehicle purchases where we didn't do across the board no vehicle purchases because some just really must be replaced, costing us more than they're worth to keep them. Some delayed hirings, but not across the board. If it's a critical position, we'll fill it. And Amanda mentioned several of those things. So, but we've already seen, some come back in the market. It's been a little tipsy in June, but that helps if we can see some sustained growth there. And the one silver lining for us during COVID was we saw a huge outdoor response in terms of people getting outdoors and hunting and fishing. The month of May, we basically doubled our license revenue May this year versus May of last year. So that was incredible to see. It's just that so far, at least this year, none of that has been able to compensate for what we lost in the stock market with the trust fund investments. So you got before you a leaner budget, and we're hoping better times are ahead. Do you have any questions or?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that's true, and I know Amanda reached out to the management of our investment funds, which is the Bank of Oklahoma, that manages the two retirement funds and the lifetime funds. And as of, I believe, the 31st of May, we had made a significant improvement in this, and the market has changed and gone up, $3 or $4 million. So there's been a lot of adjustment, but it still shows you it's a very volatile market. And if it would go the other way, we'd be right back making sure we were preserving the corpus of that lifetime license account. But things looked a lot better as of May 31st. And they continue to be positive from what it showed here when we put the budget together. So I think the smart thing to do is look at it mid-year or before, if we, after the market stabilizes a little bit, and go forward. So with those comments, I'm pleased to make a motion to approve the 2021 budget.
Motion. Second?
I noticed on the percentage reductions, law enforcement and I&E took 33 and 22%. Can they continue and sustain the function that they're currently doing with that kind of reduction?
They,
Well, everything in the department is very important, but to many of us, law enforcement, especially in rural areas, is near the top. So
that one was the 33%.
thank you.
So I don't have the one in there. So,
hopefully the first of the year.
so the slide that you're referring to is the operating budget. So the budget is comprised of several parts, and we didn't touch personnel costs because those aren't negotiable. We have to pay our people. So those didn't get included in their total. It's just their operating portion. So we did it based on their total percentage of the budget. So there's 100 and something people in law enforcement. So a big majority of their budget is personnel costs. So when you take their total budget of the agency's total budget, it was only a 19% cut. But since they could only take it off of their operations, it was a 33% cut on their operations, but not on their total division. Does that? So I hope that makes more sense, because we didn't do anything in the personnel column of the budget. So when you take that out, it's still a percentage of the total budget was 19%. But when you take out one column where you can't do any reductions, it ends up being a higher percentage on the operation side. Same thing is true in admin. We have a couple things in our budget that aren't negotiable. So anything that comes in for lifetime license sales and other fund transfers, those have to be budgeted, but they're just an in and out. So we didn't include those in admin's total budget. So when you look at our total operating budget, ours is higher than our personnel budget. So I hope that helps explain that a little bit. No.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Grondike. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Geddes. Any further discussion? There being none, take roll call.
Commissioner Brewster? Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Hughes? Commissioner Gaddis? Aye. Commissioner Grondike?
Aye.
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye. Next item on the agenda, tried to move Bill up in front of Amanda, but, we'll talk about some turkeys at this time. Bill Dinkins.
You're gonna have to quit shooting all those turkeys out there at Hollis. You've affected all of western Oklahoma.
Definitely wasn't me this year.
Well, good morning. It's hard to breathe in those masks, and then it makes my glasses fog up, so it's a double whammy. Speaking of double whammies, following on the heels of Amanda's presentation about decline in budget, unfortunately, we are also addressing a decline in wild turkeys, specifically Rio Grande wild turkeys out west. So, for clarity, Title 800 allows the commission by resolution to change bag limits per county. And so that's what we'll be discussing today. All the other changes are in 800, and we'll take rule change proposals. But for today, we've got two items on here, and, based on declining wild turkey populations in western Oklahoma, staff recommends changing the bag limits for those counties that are open to fall turkey hunting with a gun from either sex to tom only. The other part of the resolution, staff recommends reducing the bag limit for the 21 western counties that currently have 2 tom limit per county for the spring season to a 1 tom per county in the spring. Put together a few slides, and I apologize with the setup here for those up front. Rod Smith, our Southwest Region Supervisor, also is our Rio Grande Turkey Project Leader for the state. So he's in charge of monitoring our populations, and he put together a couple of these graphs here. This is the Western Region counties. This would be Northwest and Southwest Oklahoma. And so you can see, starting about 2016, it started declining to present day, roughly 56,000 estimated to 39,000 for the western part of the state. If you dial in a little closer, and Commissioner Mabry, we've talked about this. This is just Southwest region. You can see that drop off is quite significant there. And these estimates come from our winter flock surveys that our staff conduct, biologists, game wardens, and others. Obviously, the harvest as well, I don't have a graph of it, has declined. And, I've heard from members of Turkey Federation and just general turkey hunters talking to us about their concerns with the decline. So to reel it back into today's resolution, I ask you to focus on the red counties on this map. And those are the counties that are open to fall gun turkey hunting that are right now either sex. In front of you in the resolution is to change those red counties to green counties, which is tom only. So we're not closing the county to hunting, we're just changing it from an either sex bag to a tom only bag in the fall with gun. Anybody have any questions about that part of the resolution? It's fairly straightforward. So those red counties will turn green like the majority of the state. The other counties, the other shades are either closed or already tom only, so no impact on those. So that's why I asked you to focus on the red, because those will go to green if you approve the resolution. The second part is the spring season. This time, I ask you to focus on the green color. In the spring, those green counties, you're allowed to take 2 toms in that county currently. The resolution, the proposed resolution in front of you is to reduce those to 1 tom counties. So the green on this map will turn red, which will match, the rest of the state for the most part, other than the southeast. Just real briefly, southeast Oklahoma, if y'all remember, back in the 90s, that eastern subspecies population declined dramatically, and that's back when I was the turkey biologist in the southeast. So we separated out those 8 counties, and those 8 counties remain one tom combined bag for all 8 counties. So no change there, but I did want to point that out. So today's proposal to you again is to change those green counties, which are 2 tom, to 1 tom in the spring. And that's it in a nutshell. Anybody have any questions?
Sir?
I grab that mic, yeah.
Committee has met.
Is that the one that's plugged in here?
The Rules Committee has met and recommends approval as presented for that resolution.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, please. Bill, you could put South Central in that, reduced population along with Southwest. And is what we're doing sufficient, or do we need to cut out fall turkey hunting in more counties than you are? Do you believe this will be sufficient to do what needs to be done? Because we've got a pretty dramatic reduction all over my area as well.
Right. To answer that question, in talking with staff, I believe there'll be other proposed changes coming to us in August. That's when we submit our rule change proposals. And that's why I outlined at the beginning of my talk that by resolution, in 800, this is all we can change right now, other than emergency rules, which that would have been an option, I guess, but we chose to start with this, and then we'll see what bubbles up with the rule change proposals in August. But I anticipate there will be some others coming.
That's good, because you don't want to reduce people's opportunity to hunt. At the same time, if they don't have a resource, there's nothing to hunt anyway. And we've run a couple of bad years with poults in our area, and there's a noticeable reduction.
I don't disagree. In general, staff tells me that north, if you will, of I-40, there's pockets of pretty good recruitment, but it's for some reason the south, particularly southwest, is really turned down as far as populations go.
Mr. Chairman, I would second Mr. Barwick's motion.
Sir?
He seconds the motion.
Okay,
from
second.
Barwick.
Any other discussion? I might just out of curiosity, do we come up with any reasons, cause for this decline, Bill, in this southwest?
So, yeah, we started looking into it, Commissioner Mabry. I had Rod Smith look at some rainfall data to start with. You know, the research project I did in the southeast in the 90s, what it came back to was rain's a good thing when you get it at the right time and not in excessive amounts at the wrong time. And Rod sent me the rainfall data for Mangum out of our mesonet, and in April of last year, it recorded 6.8 inches of rain in April, which sounds good, except it occurred in 2 days, 2-day period. So you get those isolated storms, if you will, in some places just downpour during April, and then again in May, 7.9 inches recorded at Mangum in a 3-day period. So April's when most of them are hitting the ground, incubating. May is when they're starting to hatch out. And you get those kind of rains on top of it, and there's more to it than that. I mean, we'd have to look at nighttime temperatures and other things that impact them, their survival. But just on the surface from looking at this, those probably weren't real good for turkey reproduction. So as we know, there's a lot of things going on. Rainfall, drought, the wildfires, you know, people are talking about possible diseases, aflatoxin. I mean, it's a whole gamut of things. And no doubt, I mean, it's a ground nesting bird. There's a lot of things impacting it. So, but we are going to look at that a little closer.
Okay.
And I think the other piece of it is we're not alone in this. I know a lot of states that have Rio populations are struggling right now as
Correct.
well, Kansas and a number of others.
Right.
So I
That's
know
good.
our guys we're not just looking at it in a vacuum. We're working with the turkey biologists in our surrounding states and looking at it collectively to see if we can improve the situation.
Have you got any reports on the hatch this spring so far from anybody, or?
You know, we have a weekly supervisor's call, and so far, there hasn't been many reports, unfortunately.
Okay. On a roll call.
Mr. Brewster. Mr. Barwick. Mr. Hughes. Mr. Gaddis.
Aye.
Mr. Grondike.
Aye.
Mr. Mabry.
Aye. Next item, agenda item number 12, Bill, I think you're still on for Farrell's one. Okay.
Yeah, so for number 12 there, I'm just going to introduce Jeff Pennington. Jeff Pennington, as y'all know, is our Wild Hog Working Group member through SEPWA, and has been on that for, we tried to figure out, probably 10 years. You may remember, some of you in 2016, Jeff came to this commission and presented feral pigs in Oklahoma. And unfortunately, the update is it's not much better. So hopefully, Jeff and Scott Alls will talk about a program that will hopefully reap some good benefits in eradicating feral pigs.
We go from a population that's struggling to a population that's booming, right? Yeah, right, right.
Not only is the situation not any better, it's worse, you know, in terms of, and that's how it's going to be with feral hogs, you know, on the landscape. They're going to be a problem, and at best, we're going to be able to manage them in pockets. I want to take 10 seconds and say I have a tremendous amount of respect for Commissioner Grondike and the employees out in the field. They all feel the same way. We have a lot of respect for you, and we appreciate your efforts for 44 years. That's a staggering amount of time to do such a great job for us. And I've always impressed, like your financial figures and stuff, the times I've been to commission meetings and you talk about our retirement accounts and stuff, you pay more attention to them than I do, way more attention. And I've always appreciated it, and the employees have too. I want to take a second and say that. Getting ready to talk about feral hogs. When Scott's giving his talk here, I want you to keep in mind, shooting feral hogs or hunting feral hogs is different than controlling feral hogs. And that's different than we say for white-tailed deer, for instance. If you have a problem with too many white-tailed deer, what do we say?
Hunt 'em.
Hunt 'em. Increase your hunting on the antlerless portion of the herd. The difference with hogs, of course, is their intelligence level to be able to evade hunting, and their reproductive capabilities greatly exceed those of white-tailed deer. So what we commonly think is our control mechanism is not the effective control mechanism for feral hogs. There's a differentiation there, and keep that in mind when you listen to our next presenter. Scott Alls is the director of Wildlife Services. Wildlife Services is what a lot of people out in the field know them as the government trappers. Back in the day, they were animal damage control. Scott heads up that outfit. Feral hogs have nightmares about Scott and his guys. You know, the only thing they've got going for them in terms of the hogs is Scott doesn't have enough resources to get to a fraction of them, because their crew are the experts in reducing hogs on the landscape. So Scott's going to give us a little presentation on what they have going on right now over in Wildlife Services.
Wait, wrong presentation.
Talk
about turkeys too, that's fine. I don't mind, I like them. All right, here in Oklahoma, we have a unique deal. I work for USDA APHIS, but I also run ODAF Wildlife Services, which is a state agency. So we're kind of a dual role agency. I've got about 30 guys who are trappers on the federal side and at the moment 14 on the state. Looking to hire one more state pilot. I have 2 federal pilots. The good news is I've got 3 new helicopters coming. 2 of them will be here next week. So we're going to pick those up. The Army made us a heck of a deal in Fort Rucker. We're getting Jet Rangers that are less than 20 years old for $180,000 a piece, but they're selling for auction at about $2 million a piece. So it's actually worked out. We got a good deal. Pigs, you know, this outfit, we started and we helped get the wolves out of Oklahoma. Then the coyotes moved in. We fought coyotes for 50 years. Then it was coyotes and beavers. And about the last 10 years, you know, this year, 85% of our landowner requests are for assistance with pigs. It's really, things have really changed. And I think people are really figuring out just how expensive these things are. This map's from Noble Foundation. It's 10 years old or better. You can pretty much just shade all Oklahoma but the Panhandle as having pigs. We get them in the Panhandle, but we're able to get them out of there pretty quick when they show up, just because of the terrain. As I'm sure you all know, it's really bad down here. And what's really surprising is that Oklahoma County's not shaded, but we're catching 200-300 a year now right here in the metro or in the suburbs of Oklahoma City. They can make it anywhere. 1982, as you can see, we had just a few pigs in Oklahoma right in the southeast. Texas, Tennessee was kind of the root of our problem. If y'all will remember, back in Outdoor Life, Sports Afield, in the back section of Where to Go, everybody was selling a wild boar hunt in Texas or Tennessee. And as you can see now, what happened from that? 2012, Texas pretty much covered, as is a lot of these other southeastern states. Oklahoma, you can shade that in pretty much statewide, with the exception of the Panhandle, as having a presence of pigs. Not advancing. Okay. All right, here's the distribution in the United States. You can see the difference. The red is the most recent, and the thing I want to take note is, how did those pigs get in North Dakota? They didn't pack up and leave Oklahoma and march up there and decide, hey, this is a pretty place, we'll live here. No, somebody carried them up there. Or they come out of Canada, because we have issues with pigs. But all these little pockets of pigs are from introductions by sportsmen, basically, or somebody who just hates their neighbor, one of the two. But that's, you know, as hunting goes, it's a popular sport, it's fun. I fed a pack of dogs for 10 years. I enjoyed it a lot, but I started realizing I'm not doing any good, because it's kind of like pedaling a bicycle up a hill with a broke chain. It don't matter how fast you pedal, you're slowly going back down. This is a slide I really like. Just imagine your neighbor dumps out an old sow with a couple pigs, and in a area that's naive to pigs, 5 years, 43 pigs is about all the average survival rate will get you. So it's kind of tolerable. You're eating a few on the holidays, and it's something else to shoot during deer season, so it's kind of fun. Get to year 10, you're looking at about 605 out of those initial 3. Well, now they're starting to be expensive, especially if you do anything with your land other than hunt pigs. But here's what gets us, and you look at the densities in Oklahoma and what's going on. When you get to that year 20 and above, the reproduction's exponential. So those first 3 hogs turned into 122,000 in 20 years. So what's those 122,000 going to do in the next 20? I'm not good enough at math to figure it out, but it's a bunch. I'll tell you that. And that's kind of where we're at. We're at about year 30 here in Oklahoma, and that's what's happening, you know, and they're steadily increasing the range and expanding it, because what we have is an animal that, if you want to control them, not eliminate, but just control, if you've got 100 pigs on your property, you've got to kill 70 a year to keep 100. You've got to remove 70% just to flatline them. And with their wariness, that's very difficult. This was a very popular sport for the last hundreds of years. In Europe, everybody hunted the Eurasian wild boar, but that's a different critter than what we got. They're 1 litter a year, usually no more than 4. Well, and we have some of these here, and what they've done, they've hybridized with our ferals. And you're looking at a critter now that has 2 litters a year, and what we see out of the helicopter is about a dozen per litter in good years. Now, during years of drought, you'll see a near 0% survival rate of piglets. But in years that food's plenty, you'll see 12, 15 pigs a sow. So, 2018, the Farm Bill decided to address pigs. Congress appropriated $75 million to be distributed between APHIS and NRCS. And it's just split down the middle. And the projects were awarded to 10 states, and these are the 10 states with the worst feral swine problems: Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, and North Carolina. In our program, in APHIS, these are category 4 and 5 states. Oklahoma and Texas are category 5s, which is the most severe feral swine issues. The funds for APHIS are directed at direct control. Our job is just to get pigs off the landscape. That's all we're doing with this money. NRCS, their funds are a little different. They're aimed at supporting APHIS efforts. And a lot of what they're doing is they're buying a lot of what we call smart traps or remote traps in our pilot project areas. And then we're using them now, but when the Farm Bill's over, they will be available for the landowners to use. That's how those are going to be used. NRCS awarded grants. So actually here, it's the Conservation Commission that's handling this process. They're also doing damage assessments where they'll come in and do a detailed assessment of the property with the landowner. And because the one thing we don't have and we're trying to get is how much damage does the average pig do a year? It's all over the map. We know it's a lot. It's a lot higher number than you realize. When you start thinking about water quality, erosion, impacts to T&E species, there's just a whole gamut of stuff they affect. And it's not just crops. And then they'll be doing the outreach. We'll have a lot of public meetings and try to get landowners signed up. The one thing we do different here is, in what we do now normally, we wait on landowner requests. So when John Doe calls me and needs help with pigs, we'll get somebody to help him. With this program and where it's located, our guys are actually going door to door and asking for permission to work pigs. So we try to get as many acres in as we can. The idea of this project is to demonstrate if you dump enough funds on this and work hard enough, you can make a difference. And I'm going to show you the pilot projects here in a minute. And there's going to be questions asked about why we picked these 2 areas, and I'll explain that when they're asked. But we got 2 special projects here. One is the Red River Project, is what we call it, just that's simple. It's Cotton, Tillman, Jackson, Harmon counties. It's a 4-county area on the Red River. Okay, what's helping us here is that NRCS and APHIS in Texas are working the adjacent counties in another project across the river. So we've actually got an 8-county area on both sides of the Red River to demonstrate we can reduce numbers. So why didn't we pick Choctaw County down there? Well, or Bryan County, because with the populations what they are there now, it's kind of like falling in a grain bin of soybeans. The harder you kick and struggle, the quicker you're going to sink because they're just going to fill in from the surrounding areas. So actually what we're trying to do is set the edge. We're trying to get on the edge and then start working our way in. We didn't want to start in the middle. K County project. To the west of K County, pigs aren't very populated, but K County, we do have the Arkansas River drainage there. There's a lot of pigs. So what we want to do there is reduce that population and then in the future jump over into Osage and try to work our way east across the state line. So if we can work our way east and then we can start going south and work our way towards I-40, our idea is to start slowly, start boxing stuff in. And this will be going on way past when I retire, but that's what we're going to do till then. And the areas, the reason we chose these is just because they're basically on the edge and they're areas where we can actually reduce some impact. And in the southwest, We have a lot of irrigated crops down there. We have a lot of damage to corn and cotton from pigs. So that's really, across statewide, that's one of our areas where most significant dollar damage occurs. Okay, there's a map of the Red River project. The counties are outlined. And we want to work the Red River and those drainages that come into it. Give you an idea about Cotton County. Cotton County is a county that we've historically never done much pig work till this year. We flew, I don't know, 6 or 8 sections the other day on Cache Creek and got 524 pigs in 5 hours. And it was just so bad that it was, you have to go back for more shells and more fuel, and you'd find pigs that you hadn't seen a few minutes ago, because you never could really go in there and clean up where you were, because you just kept finding more. But it's amazing the numbers that country holds. Since March the 1st, I guess, or maybe middle of February, we pulled 2,200 out of this project right now. So we're doing pretty good down there. K County. K County is a little different monkey for us. We actually have a lot of landowner pushback up there to removing pigs. And when you dig into, you start getting under the layers, they do lease a lot of land out to people wanting to shoot pigs. And, but we'll be doing a lot of outreach up there and try to convince people that what we're doing is good. Of course, a lot of that K County project is areas that you guys manage on the WMA there around the lake. And that actually is where the majority of the pigs are harbored. So a lot of the landowner issues is not really going to affect us too bad in removing pigs. All right, issues with public land, and this is not just public, but it's private as well, is the sport hunting of hogs. Okay, 2 or 3 reasons there's issues with that. Number one, you got a field full of pigs. The first thing somebody's going to shoot is the biggest boar out there. And it's the one that's impacting the problem less than anybody else. You really, to be ideal, you shoot the young sows, because they're the ones that got the longest life in front of them and are going to produce the most pigs in the future. So the idea is to remove them. Dog hunting. Dog hunting it catches pigs. There's no doubt pigs are removed by it. The issue is I can go out today with dogs and I might catch 2 or 3. Or I could hunt that same area with a trap tonight and catch 30 or 40. It's a productivity issue. And what happens is once you start harassing these pigs, hunting them, you have issues. The pigs wise up to what's going on. I'm not going to say a pig is smart. If he was smart, he'd find a way that bacon don't taste good. But a pig is highly trainable, and you can train them to be scared of you just as easy as you can train them to want you to feed them. And so what we try to do is that when we move in an area and we start trapping, we start feeding them, and then once they start showing up right after we put the feed out, we'll put a trap up. We usually catch them the first night. We have increased our activities to include a lot of the smart or remote fired traps. It's expensive, but what we have saved in gas and vehicle wear and tear and man hours is already paid for them in 2 years. It's because everybody can watch their traps from their phone. They can see if they still have bait. They don't have to drive to them every day. It's really worked out well. Then one issue you will have on public land, but it's something you just got to kind of figure into your cost, is vandalism and theft. You're going to have some folks that are mad and are going to tear your traps up. I mean, we have it happen on private land, but not a lot. Has anybody got any questions? Yes, sir.
I had a question. I had talked to one trapper that told me that another fellow that was trapping, he may catch 25 hogs, but he only keeps the boars and he keeps the sows when he turns the little pigs out. Do you have control over any of those private trappers that are doing that?
ODAF has some rules and regs regarding transport and capture, but there is no rule out there that they have to remove every pig caught. We push for that, but it's got a lot of pushback.
Because he's taking those hogs and selling them to a high fence operator to shoot them. So there's no incentive for him to keep the little ones. He hopes the little ones grow up to be big ones, and then he can make more money out of them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then the thousands they produce, yeah.
Part of our problem.
it's kind of like a bounty system. You know, all through history, you realize that when you put monetary value to get an animal off the landscape, there's incentive to keep them there. And that's just it's one of the
What
things.
Kansas did, I think, didn't they? They took, isn't it against the law to commercially hunt those in Kansas?
Not only commercially, privately hunt them. The landowner is the only one that can shoot a hog on his property, or he can bring in, wildlife services to do it. They took out sport hunting 100%, but their problem's not like ours. They don't have how many million on their interstate already. Yes, sir. Yeah, the conservation district in that county will have, we're putting 40 traps in the Red River project. So there'll be 10 traps per county available to the landowners. I don't know how they're gonna manage that, but my understanding is it's probably free. Now, you may have to pay some. The only issue with the smart traps is the cell service or the data usage. So there may be a reimbursement for that data usage while you have it. So far, pretty good. And the manufacturers are coming out with satellite now. We're gonna try some just in areas where there's nothing. And they're doing it in Australia right now. It's working great. The satellite is, so.
How long do you think the project is gonna go?
Okay, we're funded through 2023. The Farm Bill is 5 years, 2018 through 23. We're in year 2020 and we just got our money, so you can go figure how that works. But we got 3 years on this project. I feel like it'll be extended. And then within this project, they're looking at expansion. So we've got to come up with, are we going to do an expansion in time or do an expansion in territory or a combination of both? So there's going to be a chance for some new projects as well, pilot projects. There won't be pilot projects this next time, but.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they referred to these as pilot projects, right? So
Yes.
the hope is you demonstrate that you can begin to do some effective control, and if it is successful, that they will expand it and keep it going in the future. So
Yeah.
it's all on Scott's shoulders to see if we have a future in this.
So right now, it'd only be the landowners. Project was on.
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
Are these bullbuster or those kind of?
We've got some bore busters out there, but most of the traps are, I can't remember the brand name, but it's a 2-gate trap. It's a panel system. Basically what they are is all our guys work by themselves. So the bore buster is a little cumbersome for one man to set up on his own. But the ones we've got, one guy can do it all himself. And they come on a trailer. It's an enclosed unit, and that's what's working well, real well. Yep. Yeah, they're almost a permanent trap, because where you put it, we might want to leave it, yeah. Yes. Now, they're 6 foot tall, though, so we don't have any issues with jumping. Yes. Yep.
Seen the use of both of those traps, the bore buster, and the bore buster is hard to move. You can't move it by yourself hardly. But I've had a state trapper down on my place for the last couple of weeks down there. And his trap is bigger than the bore buster. It's got 2 sides to it, so he can catch them on either one. And if he catches them on both sides, he can leave like a decoy in on the one side to attract the hogs to come back in it. But he can actually move that himself probably a third of the time that you can move a bore buster. But it's got 2 sections to it. It's got 2 gates on it. And of course, he can push the button on any time and, set the head gate to come down. But the good part of that is that, yeah, he can leave a decoy in there to decoy those other hogs, because they're very careful.
Yeah.
And if you don't trap a hog and at a time when the gate goes down, that hog is so hard to trap again, chances are you'll never trap him. They're just too smart.
The decoy makes a big difference.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys use different ways, but we'll put a small pin inside the big pin and run one in there and keep it in there. And then that night, pigs will go right in because there's already one there. It makes a huge difference.
Anybody else have any questions? Scott, thank you.
Okay?
Jeff, thank you. And Bill, appreciate that. Item number 13, Bill Dinkins again on emergency rule prohibiting feral hog hunting on wildlife management areas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you heard, we're already kind of behind. Wildlife Services is out there doing great things to try to get a handle on this situation. But in these two zones, we have some wildlife management areas that, at their request, and I concur, we'd like to shut down hog hunting. So there's no incentive, you know, for folks to take illegal transport hogs and dump them out in there. They can't hunt them. So the four for this emergency rule are Hackberry Flat, Sandy Sanders, and Waurika in the southern zone, and then Call Wildlife Management Area in that north zone. So asking for approval for closing hog hunting on those four wildlife management areas.
Mr. Chairman, the Rules Committee met on this.
Sir.
The Rules Committee met on this item also and recommends approval, and I'll make a motion to approve.
Does that prohibit wildlife services from coming in and shooting them?
No, this would just be
for the
for,
project.
Just private hunting? Okay. Have a motion. Second. Second. Discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Brewster. Commissioner Barwick. Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Gaddis. Aye. Commissioner Grondike.
Aye.
Commissioner Mabry.
Aye. Bill, you're still up, I believe, on the next item.
sir.
It's the Bill show from here on out.
Bill, I know in the last 2 years, some of the commissioners and employees with ODWC went down to Texas to look at their hog project and deer project down around Kerrville. And I know they were working with some baiting issues and poison bait to control some hogs and all. Is that kind of gone by the wayside, or is any updates on what they have done, or just not going to get it approved because it has negative effects on other animals?
I'm gonna defer to Jeff being on that committee. He could probably have the most real-time up-to-date for us.
There was a setback on the toxicant study.
Yeah.
They did some field trials kind of out in the area of Texas, back to the west of Wichita Falls. What they had happen, once they had the placebo bait there, get the hogs used to coming to the bait, placed it with the toxicant, and there were these pellets that were, approximately the size of a ping pong ball. And when the sodium nitrite was added to the pellets, I guess it changes the taste of them, and the hogs don't like it quite as well. Now, if they're used to eating it, they'll continue to go back in there and eat it, but some of them chewed up some of the product and spit it out. And there were some non-target wildlife deaths, most notably of some passerine songbird type that consumed it, and they had a lot of unacceptable level of mortality that was not related to hogs. So they had to go back and reformulate everything, and kind of went back to square one on that particular deal down there with Mr. Foster, who's leading up that at the Kerr Wildlife Management Area where we went and saw that. They're still working on it, but they had to go back to the drawing board in terms of developing a pellet that they could not or would be less likely to spit out.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on that, Bill?
Well, so,
The motion?
oh yeah, we passed that one, didn't we?
Yeah, right.
And so now he's on Sandhills.
Okay.
Item number
Ready for
14.
14? Okay, I've got a little PowerPoint I'm gonna show you, but just briefly, the department purchased approximately 5,212 acres in Woods County, emergency rules to establish hunting seasons, and this is a newly acquired WMA so that the public can utilize the property this fall. Without emergency rules, we can run it through the permanent process, but it'll be closed this fall, and we figure we got this brand new property, we might as well let our constituents enjoy it. So with that, thank you, Don.
Or you could not pass the emergency rules and I'll just go hunt it this fall.
Well, it's closed until open by rule, so, Nathan would have to write you a ticket. But anyway, okay, Woods County would be the southeast corner, like I said, 5212.5 acres. Just a little bit of a location, the top of the map there is Enid. If you go straight west, roughly 40 miles, give or take, you can see a yellow pin, and that's the Sand Hills Wildlife Management Area. Zoom in a little closer. You have Cleo Springs to the east, and if you look at the top left is Winoka, little town of Winoka. Zoom in a little closer. It's a great piece of property, contiguous, and the south boundary there is the Cimarron River. So we toured that property, and the first day we were there, we heard quail whistling, we saw turkeys, deer. I mean, it's a nice piece of property. Sand Hills WMA. Some people are asking, how did you come up with that name? Well, we kicked it around, took a lot of ideas, and I'll give credit to Scott Perry in the audience here, him and his staff kept going out there. They said, well, the feature that really pops when you step foot on it is the sand hills. And so Scott went out and took a couple of pictures just to illustrate for y'all why we named it Sand Hills Wildlife Management Area. You can see the rolling sand hills all through this property. So I think it's an adequate name. So I just wanted to give you a little update on that before we actually get into the emergency rules. Just a second. Okay, so the rules for, or proposed rule, emergency rules for Sand Hill WMA are pretty much the same as the surrounding wildlife management areas for Cimarron Hills, Cimarron Bluff, Canton, I believe even over to Fort Supply, Cooper. That's part of the
Major county.
part of the objective was to simplify regs, if you will, regionally, and someday maybe statewide we'll get there, JD. We're trying, but to keep things consistent right now, this is what Scott and Thad proposed. And so basically everything is going to be same as statewide, except closed during the first 9 days of deer gun season. And the reason deer gun season, the first 9 days is going to be closed is if you go down to deer gun, they're going to have a controlled hunt during that timeline, or time frame, excuse me. Deer primitive will be same as statewide. Deer archery will be same as statewide. Turkey, quail, everything else is pretty much same as statewide with that exception. So I think it falls in nicely with our other WMAs in that area. And, you know, the closure for certain things, if you will, if you zero it in, like quail hunting closing at 4:30, you know, people ask why do you need to do that? Obviously let those birds, from the amount of pressure they get, have a chance to covey up before nightfall, but we can't afford to leave this area open, same as statewide, if all the other in the surrounding area are closed the first 9 days, because then everybody would run over to Sand Hills WMA, because it would be the only one open for quail hunting. So that's just an example of why it's important to be consistent in that part of the state. So that's the proposal. If y'all approve the emergency rule, it'll be open this fall. We'll get it in the regulations. Allow constituents to use it.
Mr. Chairman, the Rules Committee met on this proposal also and recommends approval. I've been on that area. I know JD has too, and that's a prime hunting area, I'm telling you. So it'll be a great addition. So I make a motion to approve it so they can hunt it this fall.
Right, a motion on the floor. I'd be pleased to second that. I've been out there several times and all, and I remember Alan People saying in the 25 years he bought farm ranches for this department, he said this probably is the nicest piece of property he was ever on, because 98% of it is all huntable for deer, turkey, and quail. It's outstanding. And they had a fire there, what, 4 or 5 years ago? It's got a brand new fence around it all, which is kind of nice, so you don't have other people's cattle running all over your property. No, new fence, completely around the property.
So deer archery, deer primitive will be, yeah, deer gun will be a controlled hunt. And I agree with that recommendation till we get in there and actually do some surveys to see what's on it. That's probably a smart play.
Yeah, so we tend to do that with new acquisitions just till we get a feel for what the population can withstand. If it turns out it's got a healthy enough population, it could be open gun, then we'll come back with a proposal to do that. This is emergency rules only, so.
Get a motion, a second? Discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Brewster. Commissioner Barwick. Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Gaddis. Commissioner Grondike.
Aye.
Commissioner Mabry.
Aye. Item number 15 has been stricken. You,
Yeah, 15, we'll have to just put off because it seeks to amend emergency rules that the governor still hasn't signed, so we've got to wait till the governor signs this particular section before we can take further action on it, so. That was just to, allow camping on that Sand Hills property this fall, so hopefully we can still come back to you with this proposal in time for some camping to occur. It probably won't happen this fall, but.
okay, thank you, JD.
I'm sorry? Well, I think it's gonna be a little more rugged than that this go around.
I like your idea, Commissioner.
Cimarron River makes a good bath.
Okay, item 16, Bill, you're in that regard?
Yeah, so to follow up on the Sand Hills Wildlife Management Area, the proposal is to include that by resolution into our list that require a conservation passport. And that's pretty standard for any property that we own fee title to. So we're just adding Sand Hills Wildlife Management Area to the options for constituents if they don't have a hunting and fishing license, they still want to use the property. The conservation passport would give them that opportunity, or give them that option.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, this is a pretty easy one to add that to the passport rules. So the Rules Committee, of course, recommends approval, and I make a motion to approve it.
okay, we have a motion on the floor, second?
Second.
Second, discussion? Being none, roll call.
Commissioner Brewster. Commissioner Barwick. Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Gaddis. Commissioner Grondike.
Aye.
Commissioner Mabry.
Aye. Next item on the agenda is concerning the Oklahoma Wildlife Conservation Foundation. Ask Commissioner Barwick, has the floor on that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as required by the bylaws of the foundation, the commission must vote and approve the slate of director candidates elected by the foundation's board of directors. The candidates for approval this year are Ethan House, William Reagan, myself, Tess Monty, and I'm sure you're all familiar with those candidates because they've served since the founding of the foundation. Therefore, I make a motion to approve those 4 candidates to serve as directors on the foundation board.
Make the motion. Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Barwick. Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Gaddis. Commissioner Grondike. Commissioner Mabry.
Aye.
I have some other foundation news. We've been in existence for over 2 years now. We got some fundraising events being considered. Our website's up and running, taking in donations. And the next meeting of the foundation will take place this afternoon following the commission meeting. And we will be interviewing candidates for our executive director position. So we're pretty excited about that. Also, I'd like to remind all commissioners to make a donation to the foundation. And I had Rhonda put a little email that I prepared for each commissioner. So if you'll take a look at that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Good, thank you for that information. Appreciate that. Next item, 18, discussion of appraisal, purchase certain property located in Adair County.
And and vote on whether or not you want to go into executive session as we typically do on the discussion of real estate acquisition that hasn't closed. So that's one of the items that can be discussed in executive session. So rather than cram everybody in the executive session room behind us, we would like to convene executive session in here, should you choose to do executive session, and we'll just ask the audience to go enjoy the lobby or out to your car, or whatever you'd like to do.
Chairman, I make a motion that the commission go into executive session.
A motion to go to executive session. Second, Gaddis, discussion. Those in favor say aye. Roll call.
Commissioner Brewster. Commissioner Barwick. Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Gaddis. Aye. Commissioner Grandike.
Aye.
Commissioner Mabry.
Aye.
Oh, you gonna stop the live stream? Almost forgot about that.
I need one more signature, please. One more.
Yes, I did. You wanna ask Chad to stay here?
Yeah, that'd be good.